and today I'm going to review a thing. Do you like my little Halloween setup here? This is what you can do with a budget of only like $5. You make the most not best set for the holiday. So yes, once again it is Halloween, and this year I actually have a Halloween review. Last year I talked about my overall idea about Halloween, and I touched upon some elements of Halloween in the media world with television specials and somewhat movies. I don't think I really touched upon movies, which is why I'm doing it this year. Both Halloween and even Christmas, for some reason, always get the holiday specials. You never really see a Thanksgiving special or a St. Patrick's Day special or an Easter special. Halloween and Christmas seem to be the only holidays that actually get a special out of any show. Now that's not saying that shows don't do Valentine's Day specials or Easter specials or any of the holiday specials, but Halloween and Christmas always seem to be the culprits of when doing a holiday special. But I'm not going to touch upon the holiday specials that we watch every year. Instead, we're actually going to focus on the movies, specifically one film. Every holiday seems to have its own sort of movie, and while Christmas does have the most amount of movies based off of its own holiday, there are some Halloween movies that could be watched around this time of year. For example, The Nightmare Before Christmas is a great film to watch around this time of year because it has both love of Halloween and Christmas. I mean, I still feel like that it's more of a Halloween film because of Nightmare, and it's got more Halloween characters, and it's set on Halloween, and it was released around Halloween. But though Halloween doesn't have the amount of movies as Christmas does, a lot of horror films are watched around this time of year just because Halloween is that kind of scary holiday, and horror films seem to fit the general idea of Halloween. With that said, there are some movies that I guess are fit for the holiday, but I don't like them. That's a generic way of giving an introduction to a movie. I'm pretty sure you know by the title already what I'm going to be talking about. There's a movie called Monster House. It was an animated film put out in 2006, and I don't like it. Let's talk about it. Monster House was a 2006 animated movie that surrounded a boy named Dustin Walter, although in the film he's called DJ. He's got a creepy neighbor named Horace Nebercracker. You can automatically see a cliche right here, seeing that it's an average ordinary boy thinking that something suspicious is going on with the neighbor. But DJ soon investigates more on this little creepy neighbor idea and realizes that it's not much of the neighbor that is creepy, but the house itself. This leads DJ into thinking that the house is haunted and may actually be alive. And in this case, he's right. The house is alive. That's why it's called Monster House. The house is the monster in the movie. Not the old guy, because the old guy has a heart attack and dies. Or at least we think he does, until he comes back to life near the end of the film, where we just learn he had a little incident going on in his body. When Monster House first came out, I wasn't like every other kid at my age that wanted to see the movie, because in my personal opinion, I don't really like horror films. Horror films never really got my attention as much as adventure comedy films would. And that's perfectly fine. Not everybody has to like the same thing. Some people will like adventure, some people will like fantasy, some people will like adventure, and some people will like horror. I'm not one of those people that like horror. I rarely watch any horror films. The only horror film that I saw was The Shining. And I didn't like it very much. I thought I would, but I didn't. Monster House is definitely a horror film, but I don't want to consider it that much of a horror film because it was for children. And that's the main problem with it. This movie is for a children audience, yet it's got a lot of graphic things in it. I mean, literally, the old guy next door has a heart attack on screen. Alright, so it's not just that issue that I have a problem with. There are a few other things I find wrong with this movie. First off, the animation is... I mean, at its time, it was the thing. That's how animation looked back in 2006. I mean, it's somewhat better than what Jimmy Neutron looked like. Actually, I think Jimmy Neutron looked a bit better. Alright, CGI animation back then was alright. It's not as great as it is now, but it was exceptional at the time. But looking back on it, I mean, it can be improved a little. Everything's clear and all, but for some reason the animation just seems very dull to me. That's the word I need. Dull. That's the word. Dull. Another thing is that it's just a very forgetful film and isn't as hyped as the trailers made it look. I mean, yeah, when I saw the trailer for this on TV, it did look pretty intense because it was a monster house. A literal monster house. The trailers made it look like it was a pretty awesome film. One that I, of course, wasn't gonna see. I already established I don't like horror films, calm down. I didn't say this before, but though I didn't see the film when it first came out, I did see the film earlier this year. And it's October now, and I forgot the movie. Like, I kind of forgot all the jokes in it, if there were any jokes. And I actually forgot some of the characters. The only characters I remembered were DJ, his friend Chowder. No, not that Chowder. His name is Charles. They just call him Chowder because... Go on. Try to get the joke. And I'm pretty sure the neighbor and his wife, which I'll get to in a minute, are the only characters that I really remember. I totally forgot that DJ had a girl best friend whose name is Jenny. I forgot he had a babysitter, and that babysitter had a boyfriend, Rockhead Metal kind of guy. I forgot he had parents in the film. I forgot a lot of characters because this film is very forgetful. The only things I remember from watching the movie is the kids going inside the house, and the old guy having a heart attack, and DJ looking through his telescope, and parts of the ending, and the neighbor's wife dying, which I will get to. All of that is all I remember from this, what is it, an hour and 30-minute movie? It's very forgetful. Which I think goes along with the animation being dull. If the film is dull, then obviously it's not going to be a very memorable movie. But the one main problem that I have with the film, in my opinion, the reason why I don't like it, is because it kind of doesn't make sense. Okay, so if you didn't watch Monster House, this is going to be a really big spoiler because I'm going to be talking about exactly what the deal is with the house. So if you didn't see Monster House and you would like to, then I would suggest just shut the video off because I'm going to be talking about this for the rest of the video. Happy Halloween if you shut it off. Alright, so near the end of the movie, like every other horror film, we get an explanation to why all of this is happening. We get an explanation to what the house's deal is. Now, mind you, we've already seen the house have eyes, we see the house have a mouth, we literally see the house come alive. So why is the house doing all this? Well, that neighbor, Horace, had a wife. I don't even remember her name. Because, again, that's how forgetful this movie is. I remember he had a wife, don't remember the name. But I do know that the wife was pretty big, and everyone would call her names. And he decided to marry her, and they ran away together and were building a house so this way they could both live in it, obviously, because that's what married couples do. They live in a house. If you don't know that, you're not living life. During construction of the house, the wife manages to fall under the cement where the house is being made. So she basically gets buried underneath the house and dies. And from what we understand, her soul gets put into the house and now she kills anybody that walks by it. What? So, a fat lady died under the house, and the spirit of her went into the house. That is done... That has been done before. You know, spirits can be in houses. But it doesn't really explain why the house came alive. I mean, it probably makes sense to someone that the spirit is in the house and caused the house to come alive, but I don't understand how the house would have eyes, or the mouth, or arms, or legs even. Why is this spirit of a woman that was laughed at making the house become a living thing? That doesn't make sense. If anything, the house should just be haunted. That's the story that you could just tell. You don't need to tell the story about the house actually coming alive and eating people and putting them in the basement. Because that's kind of hard to play around with when revealing why this is all happening. I feel like the whole reason behind this story is just a big mess. It really doesn't make sense to me, and I had a very hard time following with it, as well as following along with everything else in the film, because again, it's very dull. I get that some people like watching this movie around Halloween, mostly because this film does take place around Halloween, which is something very rare in these sort of horror films. They don't necessarily take place on Halloween, they sometimes take place in the winter, like The Shining did. It's very rare that we actually see Halloween in a horror, scary film. So I get that some people would want to watch it, but I just don't think it's a film for me. I gave it a try, and I just didn't like it. And that's alright, because we all have different opinions. Right? Right?
Right?
Overall, I think that Monster House is a very forgetful, dull, and very confusing film. Though if I did have to give it some credit, I will say the animation is alright. I already touched upon the animation, but I will say that's probably the only thing that it's really got going. Oh, and also, I found out that Mitchell Musso was in this movie. Must have been having a hard time finding a job after Hannah Montana. Or, actually, he did Pair of Kings. But wait, this was before. Alright, so that's what I think of Monster House. That's my overall opinion of it. I'm sorry if maybe I don't like it, because I know a lot of people like this movie. I just can't get into it. Now I want to hear from you guys. Do you like Monster House? If so, then why? And if you don't like Monster House, do you like any sort of horror film whatsoever? Do you agree, disagree with anything I said in this video? Tell me in the comments, and also leave me your suggestions for whatever movie, TV show, random thing you want me to talk about next. Thanks for watching The Wild Review on The Wild Reviewer, and you just saw me review a thing.